So yesterday, Ukraine used an underwater drone called the Subsea Baby to strike a Russian submarine in port. And it is looking more and more like the Russian Black Sea Fleet just isn't safe anywhere. So let's get into what we know, starting with the submarine strike, including new satellite imagery, battlefield updates from Kupiansk and Pokrovsk, and then the status of the ongoing peace talks. Starting out, Ukraine released this video yesterday where their SBU said they carried out another unique special operations and staged a naval showdown in the port of Novorossiysk. For the first time in history, underwater drones Subsea Baby blew up a Russian Kilo-class submarine. As a result of the explosion, the submarine suffered critical damage and was effectively put out of action. On board the submarine were 4 caliber cruise missile launchers, which Russia used to strike at Ukrainian territory. They say the cost of these submarines is around $400 million US, but given the imposed sanctions, construction of a similar one could now cost up to $500 million. And a couple key things that stood out to me here. First off, how many of these Subsea Babies does Ukraine have? Generally speaking, when they carry out an attack like this, it's one of many. Like, this is not their only one in operation, so might see some other things going boom here before too long. What about drone or submarine nets? Any sort of protection in the harbor? It seems like Russia didn't have those, or they were bypassed. That's an interesting miss. And one that's kind of flying under the radar, but I feel like should probably get a lot of attention, is Ukraine, in releasing this footage, showed that they are actively monitoring some of the most sensitive security systems in Russia. I mean, they are watching the security system, the cameras overseeing a Russian naval yard that includes a Kilo-class submarine. That's got to ruffle some feathers in the Kremlin. Like, how many of these other cameras are they watching? What all does Ukraine have kind of constant access to, not just in Crimea, but across Russia? Now, the Russian response has been a little all over the map. It started with people saying big explosion right next to a submarine. That's going to be a problem. All the way to today, where they're saying actually no issues at all. So right after the blast, and this is kind of the camp I fall in, military informant said, quote, "It seems it was hit near the stern where the rudder, vertical and aft horizontal rudders, as well as the propeller, are located. If this is the case, even taking into account the enormous luck and absence of a direct hit on the boat itself, these very important and vulnerable mechanisms could have suffered serious damage, which could potentially put the submarine carrying calibers out of action for a long time. Quote, the Black Sea Fleet keeps on delivering as always. Even the escape to port didn't help." Now, again, that's kind of the camp I'm in. I mean, there's a lot of information we don't have at this point. We've had satellite imagery already come out today, and we've had, as expected, people point to that and say, see, definitive proof that that submarine was severely damaged. Also, the exact same picture people point to and say, see, definitive proof they missed and the submarine is fine. So we'll say jury's out, to be clear on this, but I'm definitely in the camp of military informant there, where when you're talking about a large explosion right next to a submarine, a vessel that is designed to go deep underwater for long periods of time, it is probably pretty safe to assume that it is going to have to undergo significant testing before it is considered seaworthy again. And of course, we don't know what underwater was actually hit and or damaged. The Russian message about 12 hours after the strike shifted all of a sudden to say, actually no damage at all and everybody's fine. The Black Sea Fleet sent out their official statement saying that the enemy's attempt to conduct a sabotage using an underwater drone did not achieve its goals, and that not a single ship or submarine or their crews received any damage, and all are performing their duties in a normal mode. Now, Russia did earlier today release this footage of the submarine. Now, a couple key notes. First off, assuming this is from after the strike, it's also only showing us, of course, what's above water. It's also only showing us the side that didn't actually receive the blast. So if you look at the video where the detonation took place, it's the other side of the submarine from what's being seen in this footage. But either way, we'll wait for more information to come out on that one. I think the satellite imagery confirmed that the submarine didn't sink. Beyond that, it's kind of a he said, she said at this point. Now, quick update on our current fundraiser. We teamed up about a week ago with Car for Ukraine, trying to get 4 pickup trucks to Frontline units, and we're killing it right now, guys. We're at 26,000 euros raised out of a 44,000 euro goal, so more than halfway there. In fact, the Car for Ukraine people reached out and said they're going to start putting together 2 of the trucks and getting them moving out east. So ideally, the units are going to get these trucks before Christmas. Now, the units we've teamed up with here are the 26th Artillery Brigade. They and both of these units have provided really nice thank you messages to you all for your support. And then the second one, getting 2 vehicles, is an elite special forces unit within the National Guard of Ukraine. Both messages for you all, thanking you for your support as we try to get these vehicles to them. Donations, $115 or more, get you patches either from Car for Ukraine, a pretty unique one here from the 26th Field Artillery, and then 2,500 euros or above gets you a customized message on the side of the vehicle. Look, we know vehicles are in short supply. They're getting hit left and right. And right now on the roads in Ukraine, even if they don't get hit by drones, they're undergoing pretty significant wear and tear, just the daily use. So this is a constant need. It's an absolute honor to be able to team up with Car for Ukraine and these 2 units with you all to try to get these out to the people that need them. If interested and able, the link to contribute is in the description and pinned comment below. Now, shifting over to some battlefield updates here before turning to the current peace talks and where those stand. I want to start with some updates around Kupiansk. This is an area that about a week ago, or about 4 weeks ago now, Russia said they fully controlled. Putin offered international press to show up and document it for themselves. Then a few days ago, Ukraine said, actually, we just carried out a counterattack and took back a bunch of this territory. So this is the map. We're using Deep State map from December 11th. The red is Russian-held territory, the green Ukrainian-held territory, and the green is contested, or the gray is contested. That blue is all territory now held by Ukraine. And an interesting piece here is we've seen kind of a mixed Russian response. If you're seeing a theme here, we're getting it with the Submarine, we're getting it with Kupiansk, we're getting it with elsewhere. Siversk is one as well. We'll get into here in a minute. But Russian media right out the gate addressed this in the way that kind of passed the common sense test. We had mill bloggers saying, I've been talking about this for a while. We've seen the issue with lone elements or 1, 2, 3 soldiers at a time moving into Kupiansk. They weren't able to effectively consolidate, and it was ripe for a Ukrainian counterattack. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, a lot of kind of leading Russian analysts were upset about the term taking cities on credit, saying we should not have announced this. It wasn't secure. This set up Ukraine for a big PR victory on the battlefield. That messaging has shifted a little bit. In the past 24 hours or so, it's all of a sudden turned to, just kidding, actually, Russia controls everything. Kind of. Like that's the official line out of the Ministry of Defense. The analysts still aren't buying it. In fact, Yuri Podolya, I think want to say like 2 million followers on Telegram, big account, said the situation is a Russian. The situation for our units in the western part of Kupiansk continues to deteriorate rapidly. The enemy, attacking with forces from units of several armed Ukrainian brigades, continues to push us back from the south and the north. This was yesterday, he said this. They have taken control of several more settlements, several more neighborhoods, as well as the Moskva settlement. Our 68th Division units are fighting desperately, but the enemy's superiority in forces, as well as our already obvious logistical problems, are taking this toll. Also, the fact that due to parts of the city, our drone operators had to mostly move to the left bank of the Oskil River. So this river running to the east of Kupiansk right here, they're saying that most of their operators have had to exfil this area and move back into Russian-controlled territory, extending the drone flight times. They say this has simplified Ukrainian logistics and is having a strong impact on the fight. Quote, we keep our fingers crossed. So many of the large Russian, not the American ones, not the Western ones, but the Russian analysts are looking at Kupiansk and continue to say this is a problem. And it lines up with the assessments we saw prior to about a week ago, where it did seem like Russian forces were relatively thinly spread throughout the city. And it lined up with a lot of the footage that we've seen in the last week of Ukrainian forces conducting dismounted clearance operations through portions of Kupiansk. The Russian Ministry of Defense went a different route and just earlier today said, just kidding, guys, we actually control all of Kupiansk. They say attempts by Ukrainian assault detachments consisting of 2 soldiers to infiltrate from the southwestern part of the city are being suppressed. During attacks, the enemy suffers significant losses in manpower on a daily basis. The liquidation is underway. So it's always notable when we start to see kind of leading Russian analysts in direct contradiction of the Russian Ministry of Defense. So Russian Ministry of Defense saying they actually hold this entire city, and small elements of 1, 2, 3 Ukrainian soldiers at a time is all that is trying to get in, whereas you have Russian mill bloggers saying the situation here is critical and there are multiple Ukrainian brigades pushing from different directions. Very conflicting reports out of Russia. Now, turning a bit south to Pokrovsk, the theme down here as of late is the Russian losses stacking up. It continues to be pretty staggering. The 25th Airborne Brigade, talking about operations in this area, said over the past week, the Russian losses amounted to 446 people, a 30% increase due to the introduction of reserves from the Russian 76th Airborne Assault Division. That's a big jump. And it does line up with what we've seen in terms of drone footage coming out of Ukraine and attack operations, offensive operations being carried out by Russia. I mean, just in the last week, what was it, 2, 3, 4 different platoon plus size elements getting bogged down and pretty well hammered by Ukrainian drones all around Pokrovsk. There definitely has been the introduction of additional Russian units there, and they are being put right into the attack. Robert Brovdy, the commander of the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces, issued a statement earlier today where he said their units were able to eliminate 504 Russian soldiers yesterday. 504 Russian soldiers killed in one day. Think about that, with most of it happening in the Pokrovsk direction. He said the majority of those came from the Russian 76th Division. He said, we've exceeded the mark of 6,000 Russians killed in 15 days of December, which is 42% more than the same period in November. That's wild. These numbers are huge, and they're getting bigger. We are seeing increased Russian attacks in some of these areas, and hard to say that they're getting a lot for it. It makes you wonder, like, how long can they actually sustain this? There's talk right now in some of these drone units that they're actually inflicting heavier losses on the Russian military than they've seen since the opening days, weeks, and months of the war. Like, these are significant. I feel like we gloss over that all too often. Now, shifting to one here in Siversk, I feel like this is worth covering because when the Kupiansk information came out, we saw a lot of Russian channels say, yeah, a little bit in Kupiansk, but we've taken Siversk. Kind of, not really. There's a river running, or a canal running through the middle here that does complicate logistics. It sounds like this one may also have been a little premature in Russia's claiming ownership of the entire town. I also think this speaks to this gray zone more and more. And whether it's Kupiansk, whether it's Siversk, whether it is Pokrovsk or any of the areas down there, I think folks still really want to say that there's a definitive line. And, December 1st, it was held by Ukraine. December 2nd, it was held by Russia. That's just not the case. And Plyfra, an analyst, talks about that here, the situation in Siversk. I think he lays this out well. And this is an area that the Russian Ministry of Defense on Friday said that they had completely taken. Plyfra says, quote, the situation is the following. In the last 48 hours, Ukrainian forces completed the withdrawal of all drone units from the city to the heights behind it. They are now working on Siversk to slow down Russian progress and consolidation in the city in coordination with Ukrainian infantry, which is still present and fighting, especially in the western part behind the river. The rear guard also completed its retreat behind the river, and the defenses shown have been gradually absorbed and consolidated by Russian forces. The work of the drone crews is exactly this now, making it as hard and costly as possible for the Russians to consolidate the other parts of Siversk, and ideally to mostly stop the Russians, but this is unlikely to happen. So, again, we can use the term that Russia has taken it or not, but the fact remains that this entire area around Siversk is still heavily contested. So, if you really zoom out, I would say, for instance, that Ukraine controls Kramatorsk. I feel like that's not really deniable, and that Russia controls Bakhmut. How about that? But anything along the line of contact right now is just kind of a fool's game to try to say when it was taken and who exactly controls the city. Now, I do want to shift over to the ongoing peace talks because there have been some updates in recent days. Bit of a spoiler here, Russia has already kind of shot everything down. In fact, they declined a Christmas ceasefire, a Christmas truce proposed by Ukrainian President Zelensky, and they just reiterated earlier today that the occupied territories, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk, are not up for negotiation. In fact, some of the territories that they don't even hold yet, they are claiming ownership of, saying they're not going to give any of that back up. Now, German Chancellor Merz spoke to what seemed to be an optimistic view of meetings in recent days, where he said, since the first time the war began, a ceasefire is now possible. We want to move along the path to peace together with the Ukrainians, our European partners in the United States. I believe that today in Berlin, we're taking an important step forward on that path. And it largely has been optimistic sounding, coming from Ukraine and the Europeans. Not a lot from the U.S. side right now. There was some skepticism and some rumors floating around. The head of the Ukrainian National Security Council, Umarov, put out a statement trying to squash that a little bit, saying over the past 2 days, Ukrainian-U.S. negotiations have been constructive and productive, with real progress achieved. We hope that we will reach an agreement that will bring us closer to peace by the end of the day. There's a lot of noise and anonymous speculation by the media right now. Please don't fall for rumors and provocations. Now, President Zelensky held a press conference yesterday where he talked about some of the things that had been accomplished or the directions they're moving. This is summed up here by Katerina Lusanova of Razum for Ukraine. We'll have her work linked in the description below. She says Zelensky talked about Americans wanting a quick conclusion. Quality within this speed is important to us. If speed and quality align, quote, we fully support it. In talking about security guarantees, Zelensky said we're counting on 5 documents. Some of them cover legally binding security guarantees voted on and approved by the U.S. Congress. This includes an Article 5 equivalent and will be voted on by Congress. I believe we're very close to strong guarantees. Of course, we're people at war, and during war, we believe only in facts. Theoretically, we see good elements on paper today, but the facts will be confirmed by the vote in the U.S. Congress. Smart of Zelensky and the Ukrainians there to talk about this needing to go through Congress and not just being something signed by President Trump or Witkoff or even the Secretary of State. In talking about territories, they say the Russian position hasn't changed. They want our Donbass. Our position is practical, realistic, and fair. We stand firm. We don't give up the Donbass. The Americans are seeking a compromise and have proposed a free economic zone. Neither legally nor practically will we recognize the temporarily occupied part of Donbass as Russian. Talking about if Putin rejects the deal, Zelensky said, I believe the United States will increase sanctions and provide more weapons if Putin rejects everything. I think that is a reasonable request. In terms of next steps, Zelensky said that today or tomorrow we'll finalize our documents. Then the United States will hold consultations with Russia in the coming days, followed by consultations with the U.S. president. After that, our negotiating teams will meet in the United States, perhaps even over the weekend. After this meeting, we'll see what's next and consider a leaders' meeting, at least with the U.S. president. So again, pretty positive overall, I would say, coming from the Ukrainian side. Russia wasted no time in kind of throwing cold water on everything. The deputy head of the Russian Foreign Ministry, Rybakov, said, quote, thus we have had a total of 5, talking about the territories that they have annexed. And we cannot compromise on this issue in any form, because this would, in our opinion, be a revision of one of the fundamental elements of our statehood enshrined in our Constitution. Just want to point out, again, kind of ridiculous that a nation can just write into their Constitution that they own another country's territory and then say, there's nothing we can do, guys. It's in our Constitution. What do you want from us? Foreign Minister Lavrov said, quote, we need to eliminate the root causes of the war, and it's good that the Americans understand this. They clearly said that there can be no NATO for Ukraine, and they clearly said that the lands where Russians have lived for centuries should become Russian again. That's going to be a hard sell for the Ukrainian people, but it does kind of match with what we've seen from President Trump in recent days talking about this, saying, some of that territory, Russia's already taken it.
Well, they've already lost the territory, to be honest. I mean, the territory is lost. But in terms of security guarantee, we're working with Europe on it. Europe would be a big part of that. And we're working on the security guarantees so the war doesn't start up again. We don't want to have a war start up again.
Then in terms of the unofficial Russian response coming from some of their mill bloggers, they're largely writing all of this aside, saying it's nothing. Russia's not going to agree to any of this, so what does it even matter? Fighter bomber said, at first glance, the entire plan looks like a halt to hostilities to prevent further losses of Ukrainian territories for rearmament, strengthening, creating fortified areas, and rebuilding Ukraine's economy, infrastructure, and ideology for the second stage of this war. In essence, Russia is being asked to prepare Ukraine for war with its own money. So by and large, anytime there's a talk of a temporary ceasefire or a truce or even long-term peace, Russia's take is always, this is just the European Union, NATO, and Ukraine wanting to slow down for a minute so they can get ready to attack us again at some point in the future. Look, we're going to stay up to date as best we can with these peace talks. I just personally not very optimistic. It seems like we're seeing some progress kind of between the U.S., Ukraine, and Europe, but Russia has never signaled that they're even close to considering giving up on any of their core demands from the start of this war. So we'll see which direction it goes. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.